last discussion, we looked very closely at how we can select and focus our essay topics, and we briefly outlined how the thesis idea or statement comes about. We ended that discussion by looking at how questioning can be useful for both selecting and narrowing a topic and building the thesis idea. Please see a link to that discussion in the description. So, the questions that you ask serve as prompts to stir your consciousness about the specific aspects of the topic in which you're interested. In this session, we will look more closely at building the thesis idea and how the essay gradually develops from this process. As you may already know, the thesis statement is the central claim or idea of the essay. The thesis idea is an extremely important part of planning your writing, which often answers all or most of the 5 W's, and how, as we outlined in our previous lecture. That means that once you have brainstormed and posed questions, such as who or what is involved and why, it can lead you to a narrow focus, which becomes easy for the thesis idea to emerge. Now, you may be wondering, at what stage in the writing process should I write a thesis statement? It is often advised by conventional academic writing texts, guidelines, or teachers that you should have a clear thesis statement before writing your essay. Others may concede that you may write it after or even during your essay. Many teachers and texts also dictate and prescribe that it should be the last statement in your first paragraph, or at least in your first paragraph. But let us explore why this may or may not be a good idea. It is a good idea to have a thesis statement before you draft, because the thesis statement helps you to focus your idea on one area. It helps to develop a plan and write a coherent essay. It is therefore one of the best ways to unify your paper. It also helps you to identify or outline specific ideas, including main points and supporting information that support or explain your statement or helps to build the essay. But while it is good to have a focused idea before you write your paper, and it is also okay to follow conventional guidelines, these can be problematic because they can limit your ability to think or go outside of the thesis idea you initially express if the need arises. So, you may produce an essay that provides insufficient information or incompletely addresses an idea because your initial thesis idea was not informed by reading or experiences as you will have gained closer to the end of your writing process. So, consider also that you will gain new ideas or more nuanced perspectives during the writing process or as you read and examine the topic more intimately. So, experienced writers or teachers often suggest that you may develop your thesis idea or a thesis statement or revise it during the process. The key to dealing with this is to draft an idea that helps you to focus but also remain open and flexible to changes as you go along. So let's do an example. So let's say you decided to write an essay on the topic global warming or climate change. So you've brainstormed and come up with the following ideas: the effects of global warming, consequences of ignoring these effects, recommendations for reducing or alleviating the consequences of climate change policy, or let's say the government's role in climate change or perspectives on climate change. But now, after careful consideration, you have decided to look more closely on the issue of policy that speak to or help to control climate change. So, to look at climate change policy, You may now engage in questioning again to try to identify a better focus and develop a thesis idea. So, you may ask, who are the key people involved? So, these may be citizens, maybe scientists, or maybe governments. Then you may ask, what is it that I am talking about? What is the issue that I want to address? And in this case, of course, it is climate change and then climate change policy. But then what specific aspect are you interested in talking about or addressing? And your answer may be that you want to look at the policy decisions as it relates to climate change. Or you may want to look at views on climate change. Then if you ask the question why, could you be talking about, or would you like to discuss policy for the future, or do you want to address policies that we've had in the past, or do we want to compare the policies that we've had in the past with that of the future, or we just could talk about those that we have today or those that we want to have in the future? Also, if you ask the question where, you may want to say, okay, I want to look at it at the international level, or maybe I could just look at it in the national level or the local level. Or then I could say, maybe I could look at it I look at how international policies in this regard may influence the national policies, or may want to compare national policies. So there are so many perspectives or ideas that you can take up. And then you may want to ask the question why? Why is it that I want to look at climate change policy? And why am I talking about people or citizens? Or why do I want to talk about the future or at the international level? And so you may say, okay, because there is information on this issue or scientific information that established scientific information, and this information may inform policy, right? And so, and of course, these are just examples, right? But it's according to what you want to say, right? And what is what your interests are with regards to the topic that you've selected. And so you may come up with an idea like this. Scientists should be involved in policy decisions about climate change because they continue to study the phenomenon and are equipped with empirical information which may inform national and international practices and policies. And of course, like I outlined before, this idea is based on what your interests are and what specifically you would like to address or say on this particular issue of climate change policy. Or you may have this idea. You may say there are quite a few perspectives about the consequences and causes of climate change. Some argue that climate change is fueled by human activity mainly, while others claim that it is due to natural phenomena. Others still feel that there is not sufficient evidence of effects of climate change. Now, a statement like this may lead you to compare ideas or perspectives, or you may want to classify ideas or perspectives. So right away you can see, you may see yourself leaning towards a certain rhetorical strategy. It may be comparison and contrast, or a simple explanation, or it may be a division and classification essay, if you'd like. Or it can lead to an argument where you look at all of these perspectives and then you provide your perspective and provide support why you argue that it's not those that you have outlined, or why you may agree with one of those or more than one of those that you may have outlined. So let us look at some characteristics of a thesis idea or thesis statement. Often it can be one or more sentences which present a general idea or opinion of a piece of writing. So here are some examples. Parents ought to participate more in the education of their children. Of course, this statement it's a thesis statement, but it can still be expanded further to say why or because, right? And then there is another example. Bill Cosby's conviction and sentencing will make sexual assault survivors feel safer to speak out. And of course, again, this statement can have another part or other parts. Another idea can be, in order to meaningfully benefit from anything, it requires being au fait with the issues and the responsibility involved to make the product beneficial. So let's look at another characteristic of the thesis statement, or a good thesis statement. A thesis statement is more often an opinion or perspective on a topic as against a statement of fact. Or it may be that you are weighing or providing an analysis of information or a fact that may be considered established. You may ask, well, why is this so? Well, because a fact is most likely information that has been established already or tested and proven and may be considered as common knowledge. Also, information is already there, available. So if you write a statement of fact as a thesis idea, you're likely to just simply provide information on the surface that we already know or that already exists. And so you have a thesis statement that might be considered as a fact. Derek Walcott was a well-known playwright and poet. Now look, let's compare this one with this next statement. This one says, Derek Walcott's poems capture the experience of an entire generation in exile. Well, this is a better statement. Of course, it's more specific and it speaks to a specific issue that you may be able to share your perspectives on. Let's look at another example that may be considered factual. So this one says, pollution affects the environment in many ways. Of course, this is true. But if we unpack it, you realize that, first of all, it's not very specific. And it doesn't say which kind of pollution, and it does not say in what ways it affects the environment and that kind of stuff. But however, we already know that any form of pollution affects the environment in many ways. So any information that you provide here may be information that is already known. Or we can look at this statement that says the oil and gas sector brings with it its own brand of politics and greed. And of course, you have to explain why you're making a statement like this. The first statement alone could be the thesis statement, but you have to explain why or make it a little more complex. But then it continues to say global experiences could teach us that in this environment, politics can be divisive and vicious. So this next example is very important because you must know the distinction between a question and a statement, or a question and a declarative sentence, or a telling sentence. So it says that a thesis statement is not synonymous with a topic or a title or a question. All right, so for example, this is not a thesis statement. Homes and schools. This is just simply a topic. The effects of global warming. This is a topic as well, and it doesn't say anything about the effects of global warming, or does not speak specifically to any effect of global warming. And so it's not a sentence. This next one, what motivates terrorists and assassins? Of course, this is a question, but it's also could also be a topic. And it is not a declarative sentence, or it's not a statement. If you answer the question, however, if you provide an answer for this question in the form of a statement or one or two sentences, then maybe you might have a thesis statement. And the same goes for this next example. So it says, should schools be used as shelters? This is a question, of course, and if you provide the answer, you may come up with a thesis idea. However, right now it's not a thesis idea. And then another one, management of oil and gas in Guyana. again is a topic, or it may be a title, and it's not a statement. It doesn't say anything about the management of oil and gas in Guyana. All right, and so this is another important characteristic of a thesis, idea, or statement. A thesis statement is not an announcement of the subject or topic of discussion. It is not a statement of purpose or intention. So, for example, my subject is the incompetence of the Supreme Court. This is not a thesis statement. This is just simply saying what your topic is, right? Another example, in this essay, I am writing about the effects of pollution on the environment. This is not a thesis statement, but it's a purpose statement. It's just saying what you intend to do or what you will do in this essay, but it's not a statement, a thesis statement. The next one, the Caribbean Court of Justice's ruling in favor of presidential term limits is good for Guyana because it encourages accountability and fairness in the election of national leaders. And of course, this is a thesis statement, and it's a complete sentence that provides or presents an idea or claim or a certain opinion or explanation. And of course, the thesis statement must be specific and focused. So, if you say drug addiction is a big problem, this doesn't really say anything. What kind of problem, what kinds of situations or issues may arise from drug addiction specifically? Or if you say drug addiction is detrimental to users, this is like similar. This might be a little more specific, but in what way is it detrimental, and what kinds of drug addiction are we talking about specifically? And so let's look at this one. Drug addiction has caused a dramatic increase in crimes of violence. And this one is much better. Of course, it can still be more specific, but it's a thesis statement that you can use. We've said before that the thesis idea provides a focus or an outline of your essay. And so this is like a roadmap because it basically suggests where you should go and maybe in what order you should explain what is contained in your thesis idea or thesis statement. And so if you look at a thesis statement, you can or you should be able to provide an outline of arguments or points that you can make or that you need to explain in that essay. In some cases, you may have two major points with sub ideas, or you may have 3 points with sub ideas, or you may just have 3 subheadings that you need to explain based on what is contained in your thesis idea. So let us look at an example of how you can map your essay, and you can basically determine or make an initial decision about what you will do in each paragraph or the strategies that you may use to explain the thesis idea. So we have this thesis statement that says scientists should be involved in policy decisions about climate change because they continue to study the phenomenon and are equipped with empirical information on the issue that may inform national and international practices and policies. So what this says is that scientists should be involved in policy decisions about climate change because, number one, they study the phenomenon and are equipped with empirical information. So you can begin to explain and outline how they study it, in what ways they study it, and the kinds of information that they may have available, right? That can inform policies and practices. And then you may look at the other idea that these decisions, or sorry, this information that they have based on their research or this information that is tested and proven um, will or can inform our practices and policies. And then we may want to break down this idea into two parts. So we may say that it informs our international policies and practice, which in return um, affect our national policies and practices with regards to activities that affect climate change. Right? And so in your essay, you may have, in this case, in this sense, you might, apart from your introduction and your conclusion, this paragraph, you could have one paragraph that explains this idea, and then you have another one that explains this one, and then you can go on to even a third one that begins to outline international policies and practice, or this idea here may follow from this information that you have in this second body paragraph or development paragraph. And then this may be added to it as well, or it may follow from that one. So you may have three, depending on the information that you provide, you may have three paragraphs there, or you may have just one paragraph, one big paragraph that explains all of that, right? So then you have an essay here. This is just an idea, right? That has an introduction that explains the context, and then you have the first paragraph in the body. Then you have a second paragraph in the body, and it's possible that these can be second as well, along with the second, or they can be third and fourth. And then you have your conclusion. And I'm not trying to give you a formula, but just to simply explain how you can go ahead to map your essay, right? Or provide some sort of guideline that you can work with, that you may change as you go along. And even as you read and continue to do research, your ideas may shift a little. So let us look at this other example of another thesis idea and how this essay may be different from the one that we looked at previously. So you have the thesis idea that says there are a number of views about the consequences and causes of climate change. And some argue that, and these are the views now, some argue that climate change is fueled by human activity, while others claim that it is due to natural phenomena, and others contend that there is not sufficient evidence of consequences or causes of climate change. Now, I think I explained this argument before, and I suggested ways in which you can develop this using various rhetorical strategies. But let us look at what you may look at, some of the ideas that you may look at. The first one is you may look at the first view, or explain the first view, that some argue that climate change is fueled by human activity, right? Then you may explain the second view, which is that there are others who claim that it is due to natural phenomena. And then the third, which is that there isn't sufficient evidence of any effects of climate change. And then you may compare and contrast these ideas, or you may categorize them, or you may argue that none of these are accurate because of a certain reason that you will support, or that you agree with reason 2. And of course, you will support that as well. So this can become an argument in which you compare and contrast, but then you also provide your position. So this is another way that you could develop an essay on the same topic. And now again, I will show you how you could have your paragraphs can appear. So you may have, this one might be the first body paragraph. Of course, you'll have an introduction, and the second, and then the third, and then the fourth, and maybe this could be number 4 and number 5, depending on the information that you have available and on the ideas that you have to explain in this particular view of yours, right? And finally, I leave you with this quote by John Rogers. You can't think yourself out of a writer's block. You must write yourself out of a thinking block. This means that you should not delay the process of writing because you are not sure about what you should write. Rather, begin the process by brainstorming for topics and questioning topics or ideas, or you may free write so that you can begin the writing process. But whatever you do, just write.